Let's watch some of this Nick Fuentes, Tucker Carlson interview, shall we? Let's start off with them accusing each other of being a Fed.
I thought you were a Fed.
I thought you were a Fed.
I was a Fed.
Yeah.
I'm not a Fed. But whatever, I don't care what people think.
We showed each other a badge as we know well.
No, but I thought you were a Fed because I was like, why not? It's not cucking to say you're not talking about all Jews when you oppose a foreign policy position. It's not. There's nothing liberal about that. It's just true. That's the Christian position, okay? And two, why are you attacking like the best people and not the worst people?
Well, yeah, I mean, again, he disavowed me for my views on Israel and said I talk too much about white people and Christianity. And to me, that's like a sincere ideological disagreement.
I get it.
And, same thing with Marjorie. Marjorie fired my guy. She disavowed me. And, and you worked with Blumenthal on that article, but you called me on the phone and we talked. Yeah,
I mean, I was like, what? From my perspective, this is all so stupid and inside baseball and whatever, but for the record, I was like, first of all, who is this kid? I'm working at Fox News. I'm aware there's an internet, but I'm more out of it than you may appreciate. And I'm like, out of nowhere, attacking this one. I had Joe Kent here to my house and did this interview with him. And I'm always in search of a sincere politician. Don't have to agree on everything, but I really believe sincerity is the whole game. If someone's heart is pure, he will be brave. I always have thought that, and it's turned out to be true. Marjorie's a perfect example. And that's all that matters. If you're afraid inside, if you're weak inside, you will crumble when it matters. So I really felt like, wow, Joe, don't agree with him on everything, of course, but I was like, this guy is really sincere. He's like a good person. And then you show up and you're like, he's a CIA officer, and he was a CIA contractor, but really crush the guy. And it's like, why, of all people, you agree on 90% of stuff? That was my view. And I was like, well, clearly this kid's a Fed.
Right. But you didn't know the whole story.
I didn't. Oh, yeah. You're absolutely right.
And look, and now that, and I want to be, I'm not trying to be combative. I think that.
Go ahead. You're not going to hurt my feelings.
Here's what I'm trying to say is, now that Marjorie is pushing in the right direction, I absolutely support everything she's saying. And I've not been critical of her at all this year.
Yeah.
Because I think that what she's doing is extremely courageous. And I think you're right. She is sincere.
So it sounds like you're, not to put words in your mouth, but your life experience has left you so stung by the Republican establishment. You don't trust anybody, it sounds like.
Well, no, these people attacked me when the rules were different, and now they got better, and now I'm good with them. I'm willing to be good with them, but I think that I don't know if Marjorie still has a problem with me or not.
Both parties want you to believe they're working for the people, but let's be honest. Washington is bought and paid for. Big corporations in Wall Street get bailed out, while working Americans get left with higher prices, shrinking savings, and endless promises that never materialize. The system is corrupt, and when it breaks, they won't be the ones paying the price. We will. That's why I put my trust in something outside of their control. Physical gold and silver from American Hartford Gold. Precious metals are real, tangible, and they've held their value through every economic collapse in history. You can have them delivered straight to your home or secured in a tax-advantaged gold IRA. American Hartford Gold has an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and thousands of 5-star reviews. And right now, when you call and mention my name, Kim, you can get up to $15,000 in free silver with your purchase. So call 866-584-3884 or text Kim to 65532. That's 866-584-3884 or text Kim, K-I-M, to 65532. Don't wait for politicians to fix a system they benefit from. Protect yourself today. Do you think Nick's a Fed? Do you think Tucker's a Fed? I don't think either of them are Feds. There are people I think are Feds, and there are Feds amongst us, and we have to be realistic about that. We can't think that only the Washington Post got infiltrated by the CIA. Obviously, people in independent media did too. So the question is always not, are there Feds amongst us? It's, who are the Feds amongst us? And if there are Feds amongst us, what is their goal? What are they trying to accomplish? Who would be likely to be the Fed? Now, if the Fed is going to set up an operation of independent media people, then it would be, the goal, I think, would be obviously to shape public opinion, right? And you'd want to shape that public opinion in a way that is favorable to you. And secondly, you would also maybe use it to gather names, gather database on their viewers. Like you want a particular group of viewers because you think that group of people need to be watched, surveilled, followed. And so you would have your independent media person tout a certain narrative in order to gain a particular following that then you could surveil. That's what I think, but there might be other reasons why the feds might, why feds would set up independent media people as feds, right? So you can email me or comment down below and tell me what you think that is. But those are the two that I could see. And I don't think Nick Fuentes, with his America First agenda, unless you think that they're just ushering in, he's like kind of gathering, shepherding all these people, and then he's going to turn them in a different direction, and suddenly he's going to go pro-Israel or something along those lines, or pro-military industrial complex or pro-globalist. I don't really see that. But I do think that it is a good question to wonder who is a Fed. And it's funny that these two are like, I thought you were Fed. Well, I thought you were Fed. Well, I thought you were both Feds at one point too. And you're probably thinking I'm a Fed at some point. I mean, everybody thinks each other's a Fed. But I think that it really boils down to, I think it's more obvious. And I don't think it's as subtle. I mean, the one thing that makes me think sometimes Nick is a Fed is suddenly, he's now mainstream. I mean, suddenly he's getting a lot of attention. Suddenly he's like the only person on Twitter now without a badge verification who's reached 1 million followers. Like, he seems to be promoted by everybody at this point, and the question is why? And I do think that anyone can be flipped to become a Fed. So I think that, I think you could get to anybody. You can threaten their livelihood, you could debank them, you could go after their family. I think anybody is capable of that. But, I don't think either of these guys are Feds, but I do think that there are Feds amongst us. So I think it's a fair enough question. Let's hear what Nick had to say during this conversation about Jews about Jews. I mean, this is what Nick is known for, being a giant anti-Semite, right? So let's hear what he has to say about Jews and see if you think he's sounding anti-Semitic.
I mean, as far as the Jews are concerned, I think that, like I said, you cannot actually divorce Israel and the neocons and all of those things that you talk about from Jewishness, ethnicity, religion, identity. And let me give you like a perfect example. So you say on your show that we need to treat Israel like any other country. And I sort of understand that in principle because Israel is another foreign country.
Yeah.
But Israel is unlike every other country in the sense that because the Jewish people are in a diaspora all over the world, there are significant numbers of Jews in Europe, but also in the United States. And because of their unique heritage and story, which is that they're a stateless people, they're unassimilable, they resist assimilation for thousands of years. And I think that's a good thing. And now they have this territory in Israel. There's a deep religious affection for the state. It's bound up in their identity, the story of the Exodus from Egypt, the promise of the land, all these things. So let's say in the United States, for example, somebody like a Sheldon Adelson, he's not Israeli. Is he an ideological neocon? Does he believe in the promise of democratic globalism? I don't think necessarily. His heart is in Israel. And it's because he is a proud Jewish person. And I guess what I'm saying is that if you are a Jewish person in America, you're sort of, and again, it's not because they're born, but it's sort of a rational self-interest politically to say, I'm a minority. I'm a religious ethnic minority. This is not really my home. My ancestral home is in Israel. There's like a natural affinity that Jews have for Israel. And I would say on top of that, for the international Jewish community. They're extremely organized. And many of them are critical of Israel or Israel's current government or the project of Israel. But I guess what they have in common, unlike, let's say, like Singapore, for example, is that they have this international community across borders, extremely organized, that is putting the interests of themselves before the interests of their home country. And there's no other country that has a similar arrangement like that. No other country has a strong identity like that, this religious blood and soil conviction, this history of being in the diaspora, stateless, wandering, persecuted, and in particular, the historic animosity between the Jewish people and the Europeans. They hate the Romans because the Romans destroyed the temple. That's why Eric Weinstein goes to the Arch of Titus and gives it the finger and takes a picture. We don't think like that as Americans and white people. We don't think about the Roman Empire in 2,000 years ago. They do. And so I guess that's really, and I don't think that's me saying the Jews, the Jews, the Jews. I don't think that's me being hateful. I don't think that's me being collectivist. I think that's understanding that identity politics, whether you love it or hate it, whatever you feel about it, it's a reality that we live in a world of Jews and Christians, of whites and blacks. These identities mean something to us and they mean things to each other, and we can't sort of wish them away. And it feels like white people and Christians are the only ones that do that.
Yeah. Okay, so basically what Nick Fuentes is saying here is, I think this is something that we've known, which is that there is a strong Jewish identity, and this strong Jewish identity has created an affinity and a love and a primary concern for the state of Israel over the United States. I don't think that, and that's the question of dual loyalty, and that is considered anti-Semitic, and, it's just this terrible accusation, and yet the bottom line is it's true for the vast majority of Jews. I think it's shifting for a lot of younger Jews today. I think a lot of younger Jews are saying, wait a minute, why do I have this affinity to Israel? Like, you guys have taught me this in my synagogues, in my homes. Like, I've been told to love Israel, that Israel's our true homeland, but wait a minute, why exactly? And maybe, they start to unpack the history and they start to say, oh, this isn't even something that was really taught until the late 1800s when the Zionists came around, and they weren't even religious. And, I think there's a big awakening happening amongst younger Jews. It's not happening fast enough, but it's certainly happening. But there is a reality in that there are a lot of Jews that do have this, like he mentioned, Sheldon Adelson, that has a very, it's not even a dual loyalty. It's a primary loyalty to Israel, and it is what it is. And it's not anti-Semitic to say that. It's not. It's just factual. You have to be willing to, as Ben Shapiro says, facts don't care about your feelings. Yeah, facts don't care about your feelings. And there is a fact there that there are a lot of Jews that have been brainwashed since birth to love the state of Israel above and beyond anything else. They've made it part of their identity. And when you make something part of your identity, it's very difficult to break free from that and to give loyalty. It's like a sports team. You grow up with your sports team and then you move to a different city and you just can't break your loyalty to your initial sports team. You try to root for the new home team that you have, but you're always going to go for your original home team because that's what you've been, there's an emotional attachment to it, and it's very, very difficult to break that. But I don't think Nick Fuentes is sounding particularly anti, I don't think the things that he has said, I've never really heard him say anything really anti-Semitic. I think, this is something that many of us are questioning. What is anti-Semitism now? Because we've been taught and brainwashed to think every criticism of anybody who's Jewish is anti-Semitic. And they take that to a new level, a new extreme these days, where it's literally, if anything happens and the person happens to be Jewish, if you criticize somebody and they happen to be Jewish, or if something bad happens and they happen to be Jewish, then it's an attack on Jews or it's anti-Semitism. And we're seeing that ad nauseum right now in social media, in the media. It's insane. And all it's doing is causing everybody to question everything. But I think what Nick Fuentes, during the many episodes that he's had, on his show, outside of this interview, is he points out, hey, wait a minute, Jews are in control of this, Jews are in control of that, or Jews are doing this, or Jews are doing that, and it's not in the best interest of our country, it's not in the best interest of us. And yet, it's been very taboo to point things out. Yet nobody seems to have a problem with pointing it out when it's Muslims, right? We're seeing that also ad nauseum talking about Muslims right now, and Islamophobia is like run rampant. Oh, New York, it's going to be this the Islamists are taking over New York City, and it's like you're allowed to say that, but you can't say the Jews are taking over New York City. I mean, could you imagine? You're not allowed to say that. And, so I think what Fuentes is claiming is that throughout this interview with Tucker Carlson is that organized Jewry and Jewish identity play an outsized role in shaping American politics. These are some of the points that he makes. And he says that the conservative movement, especially foreign policy on Israel, they have an outsized influence on this. And if you question this arrangement even a little bit, then you're instantly branded an anti-Semite by the establishment, which is what he's saying is why he's been branded. And he argues that many Jewish Americans and neoconservatives maintain dual loyalties, a concept he treats as self-evident, rooted in ethnic and religious history, and it's key to understanding the lobbying and the dynamics of our politics. And he also, throughout this interview, insists that not all Jews think alike. He says, my best friend is Jewish. He says that, nevertheless, the common denominator behind major policy priorities and lobbying has been there's been a lot of Jewishness in that, is what he asserts. So, and then he says, anyone who questions that influence from funding for Israel to American military intervention is targeted, censored, blacklisted by coordinated groups like the ADL, the SPLC, and so this is really what he says about it. I mean, I don't think he says anything really truly controversial. I just think that he's been branded an anti-Semite because we've been trained that anybody who criticizes or anybody that points out any influence is an anti-Semite. So I think it's kind of par for the course. But you could, again, watch the whole thing for your own self. I'm just going through some clips here and watching it with you. Now, one thing that really piqued my interest was him and Carlson talking about women. That's kind of a funny thing to start on. Let's get him off of that funny little face he's making. So they're going to go into the role of women and the patriarchy, and both of these. So, as a woman, I'm going to go ahead and give my perspective on the list. Let's watch.
Hey, why aren't people married?
Well, I mean, honestly, it's the women. The women are extremely liberal. No one talks about that. Increasingly they do, especially after the last election. There's a 45-point difference between men and women. The men are extremely conservative, increasingly. The women are extremely liberal.
What are they liberal on? What issues? Like, what does that mean, liberal?
Oh, they're very feminist.
Like, actually?
Extremely feminist, yes.
They don't believe that, do they?
I think they do.
Really?
Absolutely,
How could
yes.
you believe that? I think gender roles are a construct, that none of this is inborn? Like, you'd have to be an idiot to think that.
They like the idea of it. They like because, of course, I think all women naturally want strong men.
Of course, obviously.
They naturally want a Chad. They want like a tall, buff guy. But I think they like the idea of none of them want to work either. None of them actually want to work.
No, that's what I'm
that is
saying.
not true.
Of course, right. It's obviously true. It's always been true. Work outside the home.
Right.
They don't have enough work at home. There's a lot to do. But no, I completely agree. So that's why I question, like, they're feminists in what sense?
Yes. And, they like these vague appeals to equality. We want a chance to work and we want respect. And, ultimately, I think the whole political system is just based around women never being accountable for any of their choices. Ultimately, that seems to be that's what abortion is.
Yeah, of course.
Because 99% of abortions are elective. So they say it's an unplanned pregnancy. You had sex out of wedlock with someone you didn't intend to have kids with. So now we have to kill the kids in the womb. And, these no-fault divorce laws. These women get married to guys maybe they never intend to stay with. And then when they're out, they're done. And they want child support and they want half the stuff. And I think a lot of men are looking at women and they're very liberal. They're overweight. They have a very high estimation of themselves. I think that people call it hoflation.
Hoflation?
Yes. Their sense of their own looks and sexual value is very inflated. And so a lot of people are looking at these like frumpy, obnoxious, loudmouth, liberal women who are also very promiscuous and saying this is not actually appealing at all. And I don't want to start a family with a person
Sounds
like
awful.
this. Yeah, it is.
Okay. So let's start with the first claim that he makes. All women are feminists. So where did that even come from? women became feminists because after World War II, so during World War II, you have Rosie the Riveter, right? You have a lot of women that are out there, they're doing the jobs, the men are off to war, and women are holding down the fort. And the men came back, and it was different for what happened in Germany. It's different for Russia. It's different for areas of the world where the men were killed. A lot of men were killed. World War II, we didn't have nearly the casualties as like Germany and Russia, for example. So when the men came back, the men were like, hey, wait a minute. We just came back from war. We won a war. We're feeling mighty. We want our jobs back. You need to go into the kitchen. And all of these women who would have been they were happy that the men were coming back. They absolutely wanted this. They were happy to. But women did find value in going and doing something outside of the home. But when the men came back and the men said, okay, you guys all have to go back into the kitchen. But it went one step further than that. And that was that. Then there was the birth of the Playboy movement and the birth of actually what we want our women to be are these like Playboy bunnies. They have to stay extremely thin. They have to basically be our sex slaves. They have to tend to the home, and they're not allowed to spend. I'm the man, and I'm going to go out. I'm going to drink. I'm going to cheat on you, and I'm going to expect you to look like a Playboy bunny. And you're going to be basically sitting at home. You're going to be so freaking miserable. You're going to be dosed up on Valium, and you better stay skinny, so you better not eat a thing. And the perception of what a woman should be, it turned into this Playboy bunny. Now, that did not happen to a lot of the women in Europe. That was a very uniquely American thing. And ultimately, that there was pushback to that. When you swing the pendulum so far in any one direction, you're going to inevitably get pushback. And that is where the feminist movement kind of came in. And it was much stronger in the United States. And maybe you could even argue that the pendulum, and I certainly do argue that the pendulum then swung again on too far in the other direction. But to kind of say like, oh, this is just all women's fault because women women just bought into it. No, it's actually the men that came back and created the Playboy movement and that the Playboy bunny. And that's what women have to be, quiet and just pop Valium and stay skinny and shut up and let me go off and cheat on you and do whatever I want. That had a swing. And then for him to say that, so basically I'm saying that, you can't blame the feminist movement on women. You have to blame it on men and women. I mean, the pendulum just keeps swinging back and forth, and it ends up like this. The other thing, to say women are never accountable for their own choices. And then he brings up abortion, and he says that's where abortion came from. Well, why is there abortion? Because men are not accountable for their choices. Men would impregnate women and run off. And that happens time and time again. We don't have an epidemic in this country of single fathers. We have an epidemic of single mothers. It wasn't, the women didn't want to take responsibility. They birthed babies, and then, and then they dropped them off at dad's, and he was left with them. No, we have an epidemic of single mothers, and the men ran off. And as a response to that, as a response, again, to men's behavior of men running off, women were like, well, I don't want to have to be responsible. And so, yes, I want birth control and I want abortions. And that's again, it's a reaction to the fact that a lot of men were not sticking around. And before abortions, before birth control, this wasn't, women were just irresponsible. It was, and they had sex, and that was, the men did too. But the men were the ones who were able to run off. So to blame this all on women is, this is where I really disagree with Nick Fuentes on a lot of things.
But if you believe in the patriarchy, as I fervently do, because it's just reality, we didn't choose the system. We were born into a system that is part of nature, can't get out of it. So if you believe that that's true, which it is, then you think that men should lead. And if it's going to be better, men should make it better because that's their job.
Right.
So you don't want to give them a pass, do you? I'd be like, it's all the girls suck. So
I don't even blame it on the women because I think that it's the incentive structures. Women are allowed to do this by the legal system, by kind of social norms. Technology is a big part of it. The attention that is available to women. Women go on Instagram and they get attention from thousands of men. So it's the incentives. But I would say that because
I do agree with him that the advent of a lot of choices makes women feel like I could get a better man than you, and I think that is really challenging for men and totally inaccurate on the part of women. Right, for women to be like, well, I'm getting all this attention from guys and I can get more than you and I can get a better guy. I mean, that is absolutely has been totally destructive. And that is coming from women. It's like the Disney brain, right? I want my fairy tale prince. Disney taught me I could have that. And then you mix it now with social media and you're getting all this fake attention from men that all seem better than your actual husband or your boyfriend or whatever. Yeah, I do agree that is, but men are doing the same thing. I mean, it's not just women doing that. Men then watch porn. Men have OnlyFans and they're thinking, you should look like this. You should act like this. You should basically be subservient to me. Well, why is the woman on OnlyFans or porn or your prostitutes or your strippers, why are they subservient to you? Because you're paying for them. So and they don't have to live with you and they don't have to actually do your laundry or all the other things that you need. You see them for a short period of time. It's really easy to entertain somebody for a short period of time. And then that's it. So it's both men and women that are destroying society in this way, in different ways. And it's the advent of technology. It's not just women in social media. It's also men in pornography.
I hear this all the time. People say, well, the men need to step up and be better and lead the women. Easier said than done.
I agree. Of course, I agree with that.
They're at war.
Another thing about the men need to step up and the men need to lead the women. You know what? Who raises the men? Women. So women also need to be leading the men. It's your mother raises you. And by the way, you've just criticized her for wanting an abortion or wanting to, ditch you. So now you want her to raise you. And if she raises you, then she's actually in charge of shaping you. This is where, men turning out poorly, I say, come on, moms, it's kind of you. It starts with you. You raise them. A lot of it is dad. They get the modeling. But mom can also be firm and stand there and be a strong woman and teach him to do right by women. And then he grows up and hopefully he learns to treat his women well. I mean, I do think that part of it is a real... That's both parties. That's both parties on
with
that.
The system, and not even just the system, but also society. Because let's say you find one of these so-called good girls who's Christian and traditional, but through osmosis, wherever you go, she's going to be in society. She's going to be on TikTok. She's going to be on Instagram. She's going to be talking to other women. And maybe she's one way when you meet and get married, but 10 years down the road, 15 years, 20 years down the road, people change. And I think that women as kind of the ultimate conformists, the ultimate enforcers of like social norms, I think eventually the pressure from society kind of gets to them. And a lot of them will go in a different
Depends what
direction.
kind of husbands they have. I mean, if there's real leadership at home, I don't know a single happily married woman who's liberal. Not one. I know a lot of married women. I mean, I'm 56. All the women I know are married. Mm-hmm. And every happily married woman is non-liberal. Mm-hmm.
That also could be, Tucker, because you only hang out with non-liberal women. I mean, I know plenty of liberal women who are happy. I know plenty of liberal people who are happily married. And I know plenty of conservative people who are very miserably married. But, in the leadership aspect, well, if there's leadership at home, then everything's okay. Certainly, I do believe in gender roles because I do think it's biological. I agree with both of them on that. I do believe that men have a certain desire and women have a certain desire. And I think that it's really doing us a disservice to shove that aside and act like it doesn't exist. It certainly does. And I don't agree that women can do everything. Women that think they can work and raise kids and maintain a home, and all you do is screw yourself over as a woman. You end up doing everything, and then you're upset that your husband doesn't do as much, and you wonder why that is. I do think there's a problem with that. I'm a real big proponent of women staying at home and raising their kids. Many women in my family did, and my sister, and I applaud that. I think that's a good way to go. But I think a woman, I think both. Really, what it boils down to is both people have to be happy, and you want to, in a relationship, you should try to make each other happy. And it shouldn't be about, well, this is my role and this is what I want to do. And the minute somebody starts thinking about my role and what I want to do and me, that is when your relationship fails. And so it isn't so much about, liberal women are ruining everything. That's kind of what Nick Fuentes goes along he does eventually bring it back and say, the men are to blame because the men should be the leaders. And if they're the ones who are, they're the ones who should set the tone, they're the ones who should lead, and they're not. And that's why women are the way they are. And so he kind of brings it back around and blames it on the men. But it's a part of the conversation I don't totally agree on, but you guys could watch that one for yourself. Let's finally, this last one here, when he talks about Stalin.
It's actually funny. It was December 18th. I remember because that's an important date to me. And it's Joseph Stalin's birthday.
Oh.
I'm a fan.
You're a fan of Stalin's.
Mm-hmm. I was an admirer, but we don't need to go into that. I guess. Like,
well, that's okay. Let's get back. We'll circle back to that.
Okay. Well, they didn't.
Funny.
They didn't actually. They actually did not circle back to that. He let it go. That was it. That is all we heard about Nick Fuentes admiring Stalin. So watch it for yourself. It's a couple hour long conversation. I thought it was pretty interesting. It's a good way to get to know, this person that has been demonized and shamed and ripped off the internet and heavily censored, Nick Fuentes. You'll probably find things that you agree with him on. You'll probably find things that you don't agree with him on. That is, certainly my take on him, but interesting conversation. Wanted to get my perspective on that. Anyway. Thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iverson Show, which you can catch Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern at KimIversonShow.com. It is free for you to watch. Again, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, KimIversonShow.com. See you there.